Oh, that was a little too loud. Hey, I'm back. You would think that I've been here for 4 or 5 years and I know what the heck I'm doing, but I hit the wrong button, folks, and then I couldn't figure out why. So welcome back, everybody. My name is Bill Miksch. I'm president of WDMA Financial Group in Grayslake, Illinois, where we protect your life. We protect your health, preserve your wealth, and guaranteed an income for the rest of your life, and I couldn't say if it weren't true. This has been a lovely weekend here, Memorial Day weekend here in Chicago. The weather was actually quite perfect. We honor those who gave themselves so that we can have the freedoms that we have in this country. So that's what Memorial Day is about. We do have, I don't know about you, but we've got at least one family member, extended family member, who was actually killed in Afghanistan. This has got to be at least 10 or 15 years ago. He was 24, 23, something like that, and he was just sitting there, and a missile came through his where he was and took him out and a few others. So we honor those people who gave their lives so that we can have the freedoms that we have, and that was what yesterday was all about. Today is May 28th, I think, right? Let's just make sure. Got to turn on
27.
May 27th. Oh, and guess what? There he is. He has found his way. The man, the legend, the way of life, coming to you from the bunkers somewhere deep in the bowels of Dayton, Ohio. Sean Hauser.
I don't know what you're talking about. I was here at 7 o'clock. You were the one that couldn't figure out how to get your voice over the air.
Oh, no, you know what happened, Sean, is I for some reason my mind went to the first microphone, not number two, and I couldn't figure out.
And you're sitting far away from it now because we can barely hear you.
Yeah. Let's see. Why is that? Let's see. How about that? That's much better. Is that better?
Now we hear the sonorous tones of Engaging Time,
yes.
Billy the Kid.
Yes.
William Miksch, president of WDMA Financial.
I appreciate that, Sean. Yeah, somebody else told me this weekend I have a beautiful radio voice. I don't know what that means. Somebody has to explain to me what that means. But that being said, I appreciate it.
Well, if you have a beautiful radio voice, that means you sound like a radio announcer. You sound like, the sonorous golden tones that grace the airwaves. Now, if they say you have a face for radio, well, then they're shining you on a little bit.
Yeah, I was just about ready to go self-deprecation, Sean, and say, well, I got a face for radio too. So,
well, let me tell you, audience, that's what he certainly does have.
Yeah, that's exactly right. How are you, my friend?
I can't do a Groucho Marx impression to save my life. I am well. I was reading the email about the show today,
mm-hmm.
and on Friday, I sat down with an attorney to go through my estate planning.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always thought that this was very transactional and, it was very matter-of-fact discussion, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that lady got personal. She's like, well, when you're dead, and she kept saying that a lot. I was a little upset about that, but it was a good experience, but at the same time, now I know what it's like to go through it when the decedent or the grantor or the dead guy giving you money is me.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it's an interesting experience.
And the challenge, Sean, and we're all guilty of it, we don't want to admit our mortality. But the reality is we're all mortal. And every single one of us is going to meet our maker someday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to digress here for a second because we've had a very tough week this week. April 28th, a friend of mine, Barb Sable, passed away from, she was on a vacation in Jamaica. I think I mentioned that last week. And took them a couple of weeks to get her home because there's State Department stuff and all kinds of crap that they have to go through. A week ago Monday, I'll leave his name out for the moment. My sister's brother-in-law had a stroke on Monday, diagnosed with pancreatic cancer shortly thereafter, in the same week, stage 4, and then died of a massive stroke on Friday.
Wow.
He was 49. And that's a tough one. That was the 6th person in my life who has passed away since January of this year. And my sister and I were actually talking about this last person, a family member who just passed away, and it happened so fast. Her reaction was, "What the hell just happened?" We just saw him a couple days ago. He was fine. I actually saw him 2 weeks ago. He was excited about his new car. He was excited about doing some more WWE traveling because he was a huge, huge WWE fan. And he was living life. He had some medical issues, but nobody saw this coming. And within a week, he was gone. My brother-in-law in January died from an aortic aneurysm. I'm not sure my sister even got a chance to say goodbye to him. That's how fast it happened. So, folks, life is tough, but the reason that we do this show is to help you navigate through, honestly, some tough questions that you have to answer or ask yourself, some complex situations that may involve money or may be involved, various family members. And how do we divvy this up? How does it work? Who gets what? Who gets to control what? And so we did this. When I started this program, Sean, as you remember, I've been doing this a long time, folks, probably 35 years. And it was no secret, but I got to the point where, like, people don't know what they don't know. They don't even know. And they don't even know to ask. And then when they start asking, sometimes they ask the right questions. Maybe they've had a good advisor around them to help navigate the stuff. But the vast majority of us, short of going on the internet or ChatGPT and asking questions, you don't know what you don't know. And even if you go to Google or ChatGPT, you're still going to miss something unless you get good advice and good counsel. And then it's a matter of, to your point, Sean, when you were talking with that estate planning attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a part of you was like, not taken aback, and not offended, but like, wow, they keep asking when I'm dead. I'm right here.
Well, it was a little shocking, yeah, because okay, so I need a will, I need a power of attorney, and I need all this stuff in place, and so we started talking about that, and I get it. That event, the moment in which I stopped living, kicks everything off, right? And that's what these documents are there to make sure that my loved ones are protected, or that they are, that we don't invite the state in to make this big process out of something which should be generally pretty easy. But and I've been trained, so I got it, right? But then I started getting asked questions like, well, if you predecease your spouse and everything in your financial portfolio transfers to her, and then when she passes on, all of your assets, the way it's set up now, are going to go to her beneficiaries, so none of your family.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought about that because it just didn't think about it. And then it's like, so, I like the people that she would possibly be, giving money to or whatever, but it didn't seem fair. So then we started talking about it, and then it was kind of like, well, if she goes first, then you get the money, then should that money go to your heirs or to her heirs or to whatever? And so not only did you have to plan for the, path A, you had to plan for path B, and then you had to figure out, and it becomes very challenging. And when and the one thing she kept pointing out was, none of this matters until the point that one of you passes away, and then
Mm-hmm.
that's when this kicks off.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's usually when people under the age, and I recently was young, still think I am, but it's becoming reality now that people start leaving the planet at 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. It's not just something that happens to quote unquote old people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
It happens to, it happens to 15, 20-year-olds. It's tragedy, but it does.
I mean, even kids. There was a car accident this weekend with a police officer in Chicago, and I think one of the kids in the car was killed. I don't remember his age, but he was under 10.
Yeah.
So what I can say is, but for the grace of God, there go I. Not too many people know this, except for my immediate family members. But when I was 2, my mother was in a very serious car accident with a police officer. She got sideswiped by the guy, and this was back before car seats were made like they were, and cars, the back of the car seat was a metal plate. And my sister was in a car seat in the front seat, not the back. And I probably wasn't buckled in. I might have been, but I was 2, so I don't remember. What I can tell you is that at some point in the car accident, that car seat came up and hit me on the side of the head and broke my collarbone. What I didn't know was that it gave me a blood clot, and 2 weeks later, I was unconscious from just a minor fall that would just cause me to cry. But it knocked me out because it generated a problem with the blood clot in my head, and I survived it. And now I like to say that's why I am like I am.
Now we have an excuse.
That's exactly right. But the doctors, what I'm told is the doctors came out and said there's absolutely no reason why this child should be alive right now. God must have another reason for him. And that's what I was told. So, we all go through stuff in our life. Everybody has things that happen, good, bad, and otherwise. Challenges occur, and sometimes you want to go, why me? And other times it's I'm not going to Bible thump here, but sometimes you go and do a little research in the Testament and the readings and stuff, and you say the reason for those challenges is to see how strong you're going to be for the next problem that comes around, or for somebody that might need your strength when they're down. I'm trying to build you up, kind of thing. So yeah, this planning stuff is a challenge, and it's there so when something happens, there is a protocol to follow. And if you don't, to your point, Sean, the state in which you live will have its own protocol. And you want to make sure that if you've got control over the destination of your assets, that's what this whole conversation the last few weeks has been about. And it's not just with your estate, but how your life insurance is set up. If you've got disability income, did you get the right amount or the right kind? Did you sit with an advisor to get more or get less depending on your circumstances? I hear this a lot. Well, I've got enough money in my 401k, I don't need life insurance. Okay, maybe, but you understand the premium, the death benefit is income tax free, and your 401k is not. And to your point about who gets the money, that's actually a big deal when you start to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and go, and you even said it, Sean, I didn't even think about that. If something happens to me, the money goes to Kelly, then something happens to her and all the money goes to her heirs, and my family is left out holding the bag. And there are ways to deal with that, but If you don't think about that or nobody prompts you to think about that, then you're just going to, you're just on the ride. And,
Right.
And then you get to a point where decisions need to be made, and maybe you can't make those decisions because your capacity is now, been challenged. So it's a tough thing, but nobody likes to admit their mortality, and yet at the same time, we're all mortal, and we're all going to go. And it's a tough thing. Powers of attorney that we talked about a couple weeks ago are there specifically so that if a person becomes incapacitated, you have identified a person or persons to manage your health care and personal affairs. That's what that power of attorney is, and you've identified a person you think you or you believe you can trust. And by the way, you should have a secondary one just in case they want to check out, or if somebody is challenging their efficiencies or efficacy in the way they're managing things, because it does happen. And then once you cease to exist, the will steps in and says, okay, this is how my affairs are going to be handled. However, think about this, Sean, and this question came up last week. If you have a beneficial interest in life insurance, 401k, transfer on death, and then you have your will that says everything I own goes split up 5 different ways, let's say, or 10 different ways. Which supersedes which? Does the beneficial interest supersede the will, or does the will supersede the beneficial interest?
I think that beneficial interest supersedes, isn't it?
Yes, exactly right. The beneficial interest is a contractual arrangement between the decedent and the life insurance company, period, full stop. So if you have life insurance or annuities or 401k or an investment portfolio or a bank account, every one of those things has a beneficiary, maybe a secondary or tertiary beneficiary, or what's a secondary is also called a contingent beneficiary, such that if the primary is no longer around, the secondary position steps in, and if the secondary position person is no longer around, the third person picks up, and I'll come back to that maybe a little later. But the beneficial interest in those particular products and anything else that has a beneficial interest escapes the will, avoids probate, and goes right to the beneficiary, period, full stop. But if you're not planning in the full context of the assets that you have, and sitting down and doing the trust or the will, your estate planning attorney doesn't say what else do you have, or maybe doesn't go far enough. Even if you're trained like you or me, Sean, there are things that we may end up missing because part of it is I know this stuff. I don't need all that work, or you don't have to tell me about that. I already know. Except for the by the way clause, right? And so if they don't ask the questions, and then your will or trust says, well, everything gets split up 8 different ways, well, of what? What's left? Your house, your cars, your collectibles, maybe patents that you might own, something that is other than a beneficial interest. And so somebody goes, well, Sean's worth $10 million. I can't wait. Hurry up, Sean, and die. And then they find out that $9 million of that was a life insurance policy. And it's going to go to one person. And those people at the sitting of the will are going to go, they're sitting there like hungry animals waiting to get their piece. And then they're finding out they're only going to get $1 million split 10 ways, not 9 or 10 million split 10 ways. And it's a wake-up call to those who are beneficiaries of the will or other assets. But if you didn't know while you were alive that could happen, the Almighty is not going to give you a mulligan to go, hey, Sean, I'm going to send you back. You need to fix that, and then I'm going to bring you back. and you're going to be looking at them going, no, I like it here. It's fine. so,
No,
so
it's true.
this is not an easy thing to do. I'll be the first one to tell you, when this last family member died, the first thing I thought about was, it's time for Bill to stop being the shoemaker's son and to be the shoemaker. And so I've got an appointment next week with my estate planning attorney. Hopefully, I stick around long enough to deal with it. My estate's not complicated, but I have an agency that does have some moving parts to it. And I have to figure out things like, what happens to it? Is it going to be sold? I know who it's going to be sold to if it's going to be sold, but what's the price? What about the assets that we have? If I do a trust, I want to make sure I have a pour over will, and then I put those assets into my pour over will so they can at least escape most of probate, if not all of it. But if I don't do those things, there's going to be stuff that's going to be probated, and whatever my beneficiaries are going to go, I could see somebody going, he was giving all this advice to everybody else, but he didn't do anything for himself. Like Warren Berger. So.
We talk about Warren Berger and we talk about Prince, or the artist formerly known as whoever, but and it's funny because these people, Warren Berger, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, right?
Yep.
Had to know an attorney. Had to know somebody he could just say, hey, could you throw together a rudimentary will for me?
Yeah.
But probably figured he had plenty of time, or just figured, we'll get around to it, or even take the arrogant approach I had at one point, which is, well, what do I care? I'm dead.
Actually, the truth is, Sean, he hated attorneys.
Well, that's something to be pondered, I'm sure. But
and he was Chief Justice, so think about that. You're sitting in front of the Chief Justice, and he already has disdain for you while he's talking to you. So, I don't know how you manage that one.
Well, yeah, but to think about that though, it'd be like that you said you made the reference to the cobbler, where the cobbler's children have no shoes. But it would, for me, someone who appears on this radio show and has done this before in his life, handling people's retirement accounts. The fact that I got to 55 years of age without a will and a power of attorney and all of that stuff in place, it's almost negligence. So, finally had to get it done.
Yep. And like I said, when this last family member passed, I'm like, okay, time to redo. The last time Sally and I did our thing was like 20-something years ago. So I'm not even sure Trevor was born yet. So, and this is stuff I do for a living, but life happens. And you do take the position that I'll get to it when it's time, or when I have the time, or I'll get to it tomorrow, or tomorrow doesn't come. And what happens if tomorrow doesn't come, that you don't see tomorrow? And I this weekend we had the kids over for a barbecue for Memorial Day, which was kind of sweet. Randy wasn't in town, but he was. My daughter called him on FaceTime, so we FaceTimed him for about an hour and a half or so while we're having dinner.
Uh-huh.
He's munching on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and we're enjoying burgers and brats and dogs. His loss. But I have mentioned to every single one of my children, I don't care what you do, but you got to do something. You have to make sure you got a power of attorney. One of my kids asked me why, and I'm like, well, you're of age, first of all. You're an adult now. If you end up in the emergency room and mom and I walk in and we're like, we're his parents, they have every right to go, sorry, without power of attorney, we can't talk to you. Or we'll tell you what's wrong with him, but you can't make any decisions for him. And, whether they do something or not is a separate matter, but it's not for lack of trying. And then I've also told them, you know, you don't have a lot, but to the extent you have something, you probably should have a will. And I know two of my kids, actually three of them, have a bunch of collectibles, baseball cards, uniforms from football and hockey players that may or may not have any value, but maybe to somebody they do. I know I've got 1, 2, 3 guitars. One of them is not cheap, for sure. The other two, one may have some value, even though it's 40 years old, because of the nature of how it's made. And the other one is not worth the wood it's made out of. But they may have some value. The songs that I've written, some of them are copyrighted. So does that have any innate value? I don't know. If somebody buys it, do I get something out of it? Those are things I don't have any idea what the answers are. That's an attorney question. And those are the kind of things, folks, that you need to be able to sit down just like Sean did and then have questions posed to you that you don't think about because it doesn't cross your mind, and that's okay. That's why you bring advisors in who know what they're doing. And Sean has heard me say this plenty of times. Don't do this by yourself. There's a lot of stuff that you can do by yourself, not this. That I know there's stuff on the internet you can do. I promise you, you will make a mistake. Even if you're an engineer-like brain, you'll make a mistake. And then you went from having something that you thought was airtight to, oh my God, I died intestate, which means you died with nothing, except no will, no nothing, because you didn't do something, you didn't execute the thing the right way. And the fact that it might cost a couple of $1,000s to get it off the ground, it's a couple $1,000s, folks, it's a lot of money for some people, and for others it's not. And for others that have huge estates, business owners that are worth $50, $100 million, if you think a couple $1,000s is a lot of money, you ain't see nothing compared to what those guys have to pay. This whole show was started on the premise that we're going to help you walk through stuff that is complex. We try to make it as simple as possible. We try to educate you as much as we can. And if you are in need of advice, the phone number that you want to dial in is 262-394-6555. Or Sean, they can email us to what would be the email that they would send an email to? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, studio@lakesradio.org.
So there are different ways, and if you've got an advisor, use them. You know, if not me, then who? So there's a lot of good advisors out there from Maine to Hawaii. There's a lot of schmucks too, so you got to be careful who you're working with. I won't name names. I don't want to get sued. So anyway, we've burned through the first half hour, but I think that conversation was needed to be had, Sean. We're going to get into what a simple trust, a marital trust, and an AB trust are and what the differences are when we come back after these messages. Any thoughts before we go, Sean?
Nope. Ready to talk about that. Yeah, AB trust, boy, I haven't heard that phrase in 100 years.
Yeah, well, that's because I'm 102.
Well,
Sally, don't answer that question.
That's also an exaggeration.
Yes, I'm 28. All right, with that being said, this is 101.5 FM WLCB, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. This is Your Insurance Corner. Sean and I will be right back after these short messages.